Then Michel Jourdain Jr. and Greg Moore. But the cause of the yellow flag, the fire from the back of Juan Fangio's car, and guys caught up with him in the pit lane.
Juan Fangio has made his way back to pit lane. We spoke to Dan Gurney. Weren't quite sure what the problem is. Do you know what it was, Juan?
Well, it seems like maybe something broke, and I lost all pressure and I lost the engine. I was pulling 9,000 RPM at the time, so we've been able to at least save the car because, you know, it was in flame. And well, I mean, it was a very good weekend except the race itself.
Not a good start for the race, but now we go to the off-season. You guys are going to get a lot of testing done. The car's been coming on pretty well, and you'll be developing more of the Toyota as the winter goes on.
Yes, definitely. I think we came from a long way, and we have a long way to go. So winter season, it will be very strong for us. We need to catch up the competition and trying to be as close we can for the beginning of in Homestead. Anyway, I think it will take some time before you can see the results, but they will come sooner or later.
Well, we look forward to seeing you have a good run at Homestead in the 1998 season, and have a good off-season, Juan Manuel.
Thank you very much.
Juan Manuel Fangio, the driver of the Toyota, of course, for the Dan Gurney team, the All-American Racers.
Thanks, Guy. Juan Fangio very disappointed, obviously, to be out of this race quite so early on, but that's just the way it goes sometimes. We're just taking a look at the running order in the top left-hand corner of the screen, running down the list. Really, of course, not much different to the starting off positions, because, well, in fact, no difference to the starting off positions, because nobody except the ones who've moved up from Juan Fangio's demise. And remember, he was quite a long way down on the grid anyway. He was down in 18th position, so the guys behind him have all moved up one, but everyone else has stayed the same. And Maurizio Gugelmin has now taken a position in the laps led so far this year. Jimmy Vasser had led 5 more laps than him up till this point, but courtesy of starting under a yellow flag here today, Maurizio Gugelmin's just got ahead of him. And in fact, he's not far behind Gilles de Ferran, who's 4th in the laps led standings, just a few more further laps ahead, so Gugelmin's got a good chance of moving up that list a bit as we go through the course of this afternoon's event. Let's hope they start racing soon. Again, looking down at the track, you can see the clean-up operation in process, and they've laid that cement dust down to try and soak up some of the oil. Now they're brushing over the top of it to try and get rid of it. Obviously, they don't want much cement dust down. When cars are going around here at speeds of over 240 miles per hour, then obviously a little bit of a dust cloud created could cause major problems in terms of visibility for all of the drivers. Maurizio Gugelmin's performance yesterday, Jeremy, really very impressive, of course. I mean, the car setup was great. Pac West, once again, we spoke about it in the last race. They really have got their act together, and their cars this weekend have been absolutely superb, haven't they?
Absolutely flawless. So they've changed virtually nothing all weekend. They haven't even changed a shock setting, a ride height setting, anything at all. They tested here a couple of weeks ago, ran very well indeed, came back, the settings translated perfectly. The car has just been absolutely flawless all weekend. And in fact, this morning, Maurizio Gugelmin took out the spare car. They hadn't run it previously. They were just wanted to cover all their bases. They remembered a couple of years ago at the Michigan race, the US 500, that there was a crash on the first lap. The race was stopped and then restarted. And in that sort of situation, if you have a spare car that's ready to go, you can jump into it. So they wanted to make sure their spare car was ready to go. It was ready to go. It was 3rd quickest this morning in the warm-up at 2:35 plus without even trying. So that team has got a handle on this racetrack, and in fact a handle on the whole series. Maurizio Gugelmin has been the most consistent performer in qualifying all year long. Great effort.
Well, while the Pac West team's got a handle on it, the team we're looking at the moment going up the back stretch has not got a handle on it so far. The Penske team really have been struggling here this weekend. Alonso Jr. and Paul Tracy qualifying together back on row 10 of the grid, but don't count them out. Don't forget, this is a 500-mile race, and anything can happen. Reliability is a major factor. We could see the Penskes coming near the front towards the end. Cars just touring round at slow speed at the moment as Maurizio Gugelmin has completed 8 laps now, and they've been 8 terribly gentle laps compared with what he was doing in qualifying yesterday. They're seeing the packed grandstands, all the car parking around the track as well. It really has a tremendous facility. We've got a couple of cars into the pits though there. Max Papis and Gualter Sales have decided to take the opportunity of this yellow flag to actually bring the cars in and do a little bit of a top-up. Now these two starting right from the back, only one car behind them, Ari Leinhike, and having a little battle in the pit lane, and in fact they can't overtake one another, I wouldn't think, because we're still under yellows. I didn't quite know if they're allowed to overtake each other in the pits in that situation, but and they both come back out again, and in fact Gualter Sales has come out ahead of Max Papis now.
Great job by the Davies Racing crew there. Actually, you know, that team has been very good on pit stops all year long. Gualter finished a career best 7th last time out at Laguna Seca, and Gualter ran very, very well indeed at that race, but the pit crew was sensational. They spent less time in the pits, I think, than anybody in that particular race, and that enabled Gualter to move up 4 or 5 positions. And there's another one for that crew here this afternoon, so hats off to those boys. And he will start at the back of the field, but you know, they can now run at least 4 or 5 laps more than anybody else, assuming we finally go green here and get some racing underway.
So that's moved Harry Lyondike up a couple of places. We've just heard that there's 2 laps to go to the green flag, so this race will get underway very soon now. Let's hope we don't have any repetition of an engine failure or an oil leak going right into the green flag that we had to get the race underway initially. Somebody else is coming in. In fact, Harry himself is coming into the pits as well. And the car that was right ahead of him, now that could be Arndt Meyer. It is Arndt Meyer coming into the pits as well. So these two also taking advantage of the situation that they might as well top up and get fuel aboard. There's nothing to lose. They're right down at the back of the field anyway. So there's really nothing to lose by coming into the pits and rejoining behind the rest of the cars, and it just could help them as we go through the race. Of course, there will be other yellow flag periods, and if it falls nicely for them, they may be able to avoid a stop that the front runners will have to make. So Harry Lyondike makes his first pit stop in the kart series this year. Jeremy, Harry has been racing, of course. It's not as if he's been sitting idly this year. He should be pretty race sharp, shouldn't he?
He certainly is. But he's been racing in the Indy Racing League. Of course, he won the Indianapolis 500 this year for the 2nd time in his career. So he's used to making pits. So there's a fuel leakage there. And there's obviously some small conflagration there. And the great thing about methanol is that water will dilute it and put out of the fire. There is one of the refueling guys there, some a spillage, and the water thrown over them. So we hope there that he's not too seriously hurt. But there's good news and bad news with methanol. The good news is, number one, it can be put out with water, and number two, it is less combustible than gasoline or petrol. So there are 2 major advantages there. The only disadvantage, you cannot see when it burns. It burns with an invisible flame. But you feel it pretty damn quick, and then the crews there, they have to be ready. They are ready. There are people behind the wall with water bottles there, ready to put out any such leakage such as that.
This is just looking back at what happened, Jeremy, and there you see one guy starts sort of banging his legs as if he has got some flames, and immediately the team goes to work. Now, what happens is these guys always react very quickly, and partly because of what you were saying, because of that invisible flame, nobody ever is quite sure whether somebody is actually on fire or not. So as soon as somebody starts sort of beating themselves and implying that they may be in trouble, then the whole team goes crazy, which is of course quite right, starting throwing water everywhere. It looks as though the man is all right, and he's being, obviously he'll be taken off to the kart medical centre, I should think. The kart medical centre that goes to all of the races applies just as much for the team members as it does for the drivers. In fact, everybody who has a hard card at the kart races is able to be looked after by the kart medical centre. It really is a tremendous facility, transported to every single race on the calendar. So that's good news. We're just watching the leaders come round now, though, and it looks as though we're going to go green flag racing pretty soon. Down to Guy for a moment.
Yeah, just to update you on that fire, they got the fuel in. The problem was when they disengaged the fuel, or the methanol, that's when it hit the hot part of the engine, and of course it caught fire. Harry got out okay, but one of the crew members has got some fuel in his eye there, seeing to him right now.
Next guy, well, the race is about to get underway again as they are going to see the green flag for the first time this afternoon, a rather late start after 18.5 minutes that the cars have been out there, and we go racing. And Maurizio Gugelmin leads away from his pole position. Jimmy Vasser goes chasing after him, and Brian Herter in 3rd place. Then you're watching Scott Pruitt heading up that next little gaggle of cars, but Scott Pruitt's got a couple of cars bearing down on him. Michel Jourdain, one of those, the young Mexican who performed so well yesterday, and in fact Jourdain's going past Pruitt as they go up towards turn number 3. Andre Ribeiro is also making up some ground.
And that's Robbie Gordon going around the outside there behind Andre Ribeiro. Robbie Gordon, a great start in the Hogan racing car there, and a tremendous move by Robbie Gordon. He is certainly one of the more opportunist drivers in this field, and there's a great opportunity for Robbie, and he grabs it with both hands around the outside.
So there's the leader, Maurizio Gugelmin. 2nd place man is Jimmy Vasser, the winner from Laguna Seca, the outgoing champion, remember, and there is the view from on board Jimmy Vasser's onboard camera as we come into turns 3 and 4, chasing after Maurizio Gugelmin. These two really have been the class of the field so far this weekend. Behind them in third is the Shell car of Brian Herter, and we've seen him perform well in the early stages of several of the recent races, only to see his Goodyear tyres go off. Oh, we've got a yellow flag again. The yellow is out. We've got an accident right in front of our commentary box. One of the Penske's has hit the wall, and it's Paul Tracy, as you can see on screen, the number 3 car of Canadian Paul Tracy. And there's bits and pieces and debris all over the place. I can see one of his wheels is down on the grass opposite our commentary position on the entrance to the pit lane. And once again, Jeremy, Paul Tracy, well, we see some movement. That's good news. Tracy, who's been out of the last 4 races in the early stages of the race, once again it goes wrong for the Canadian. Let's take a look at the replay. You can see, well, that's quite late on. He was already into the grey and into the wall as we picked it up. It was a heavy accident against the wall, and it was the left rear ripped off. Let's see if we can pick it up here in the background as Paul Tracy just lost the back end. Just a repeat of what happened to Zanardi in that practice accident, a repeat of what happened to Patrick Carpentier as well. And when it lets go at 240 miles an hour, boy, do you know about it quickly. It's just straight into the wall. There's nothing the driver can do about it. But thankfully, great news to see Paul Tracy is able to walk away from it.
That was he was completely on his own there, Ben. There was absolutely no one around him. He'd moved up a couple of places on that first lap, and the car just suddenly snapped on him. Astonishing accident, and here's a replay of it. We can where is he? There's Gilles de Ferran going through. Scott Pruitt 2 cars back from there. There he is, just loses it completely on his own. No one else even close to him. And the car snaps on. When it goes sideways on this track, on this sort of speed, absolutely nothing you can do.
So into the wall at very high speed indeed, but great to see him out of the car. And just watching down in front of our commentary position there, you can see Roger Penske sitting down in the pits, or standing down in the pits, obviously very concerned about that accident. And Paul Tracy makes his way back to the pit lane to discuss it. He was a little higher than some of the other cars, but not on a particularly high line as he came through turn 4 there. Just a little bit higher than 1 or 2 of the other competitors behind him. But in the end, the back end just let go so suddenly, there was absolutely nothing he could do about it. Paul Tracy's okay, but we're under yellow flag once again, and it's really taking some time to get this race up to proper speed. Gugelmin is our early race leader. Most of the laps in this race have been held under yellow flag. Now, we have completed 15 laps, but there's still only 234 to go. It's a 500-mile race, remember. It's a long, long way to go, and it hasn't even had a chance to settle down into any sort of rhythm. The delayed start caused by the problem for Juan Fangio, and then just when we were beginning to get a bit of a rhythm going, a big accident for the Canadian Paul Tracy that's seen him hit the wall very, very hard indeed. And you can see now the kart safety team having to do quite a lot of work. Obviously, a lot of fluids came out from that very damaged car. Oil, water, hydraulic fluids, all sorts of mess on the track, and that's what they're now trying to clean up. So that's going to take a few moments, I would think, before they get that completely cleared up again. Otherwise, not any major changes in that sort of little first flurry that we had there, except for good performances, Jeremy, particularly from Michel Jourdain and Michael Andretti. Yep,
Jourdain got around the outside of Scott Pruitt there, and Michael Andretti, over the opportunist, moved past as well. So Scott Pruitt actually fell back 3 places. Andre Ribeiro moved up a couple, so did Robbie Gordon. And really the biggest loser probably was Raul Boesel. He fell from 9th back to 13th he is now, right ahead of Adrian Fernando. So just some shuffling of positions there. Alanson Jr. made a stop just before we went green, actually. So he's right behind Arie Luyendyk now. Luyendyk is up to 20th place. After that pit stop, he's able to get past 4 or 5 cars right away afterwards, inside those, lap and a half or a couple of laps of green flag racing before Paul Tracy's accident. There's Alanson Jr. in again, just to top up with the fuel. He's pretty much at the back of the field in any case, so make sure they'll probably change tyres just in case he picked up any debris. Start off with a fresh set of tyres now they've cleaned up the track. So Alanson Jr. makes it into the pits, and the sole remaining Penske in the race now. The team can focus on this one, but they'll be so disappointed. And of course, in terms of the championship, it makes a difference, because Paul Tracy was one of those guys trying to hold on to 3rd place in the championship. Jimmy Vasser had got ahead of him last time out in Laguna Seca. Tracy started this race 4th in the championship, but he's got several people close behind him, and it really does mean that Paul's probably going to drop back several places in the points table as a result of that crash this afternoon. So
a really disappointing end to the season for the Canadian. Spoke to him briefly earlier in the weekend, and no doubt somewhat disheartened, I think, by the performance of the Penske on the road courses in the latter part of this year. It worked so well on the oval tracks earlier on in the season, but on the road courses it just would not come together for